Get all the credit, all the satisfaction, all the good wishes of poor people come to us. I said, I'm better off than you. I don't pay a single penny from my pocket, yet all the credit of all the good wishes of all the poor people, somehow they come back to me. That's the motivation for us to do this scheme. And as I conclude, let me give you an example of how it actually happens on the field. I am very fond of visiting interior areas, go to interior hospitals, and the number that he mentioned was 5,000, today it's 12,000 hospitals, and they are not Apollos and Maxes. They are small hospitals who are participating in the scheme. So I visited one of the hospitals, and there was this 100-year-old lady. In our scheme, we don't have an age barrier. So she called me, "Beta, idhar aao." So I went to her, very feeble voice. She said, "Beta, मैं बहुत तकलीफ में हूँ, लेकिन अस्पताल वालों ने मेरा बड़ा ख्याल रखा है." हमने कहा, "नहीं माता जी, सब ठीक हो जाए." "नहीं बेटा, मेरा समय आ गया है, अब तो मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊँगी." नहीं, I tried to convince her, no, everything is fine. But she insisted, "No, अब मेरा समय आ गया है. ऊपर वाले से जाके एक बात जरूर कहूँगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बड़ी अच्छी है." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and what should I say? It's hotting up. And what an outstanding speaker, and thank you very much, Mr. Swarup, for being a part of the government, because if you would have been in the media, people like me would have lost our jobs. Please continue being in labor and keep delivering. Don't bother about India's population. Our next recipient, ladies and gentlemen, is for Excellent Contribution Award, and it goes to Mr. Armstrong Pame of the Indian Administrative Service for involving tribal community volunteers to build a 100-kilometer road between Tamenglong and Haflong. I beg your pardon if I'm a little off the track in the sound of the place, in Manipur, without any government help. Without any government help. I believe there is an audiovisual. If we could have the light switched off, and I would request all of you and our Honorable Minister and Chairman of Jury to kindly have a look at the audiovisuals before I read the citation. Thank you. And we obviously apologize for Mr. Swarup, you gave such an outstanding speech. The audiovisuals refused to deliver. Ladies and gentlemen, as per the protocol, we are sorry we are unable to play the audiovisual. Let me, with the permission of the Honorable Minister, can I just be rested to read the citation, please? Thank you so much. You may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister and Chairman of Jury, here's the citation. Please lend me your ears. Born in a remote village called Impa in Tamlong district of Manipur, till date has no motorable roads and electricity. Mr. Armstrong Pame joined the services in 2009 in Manipur Tripura cadre and is the first IS officer from the Jeme Naga tribe. Named after Neil Armstrong, the first man to land on the moon, Shri Pame completed his BSc in physics, amazing college, St. Stephen's College of Delhi University, and is presently posted as SDM Tausim of Manipur. Amazing college. True to the adage, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. It is told to us in Stephens on the first day when you attend their ceremony of getting into that college. Mr. Pame knew all along what it means to be without any road link between Manipur, Nagaland and Assam. Despite Centre having sanctioned 100 crores for the construction of this road in 1992, the project never took off. The moment he joined as the SDM, the expectations of villagers who were by now fed up of false government promises were raised immensely. The last straw came when there was an outbreak of tropical disease like typhoid and malaria. It took 2 days for villagers of Tausim in Tamenglong district to reach the nearest hospital on foot. Welcome to India in the 21st century. Hundreds of patients, including pregnant women, had to be carried on makeshift bamboo stretchers as the town doctors were unwilling to come to the village. Some of them, including Pame's uncle, died on the way. Mr. Pame, while traveling on foot from 21 days to tour over 30 villages with a group of students, then realized how important and urgent it was to build this road link. He decided to do things his way and build the road between Tamenglong district and Haflong in Assam via Tamenglong, Barak River, Azuram, Makhu River, Tosim, Phoklong, Katangnam, Chari River, Herilua, Laisong, Mohur. Yes, they are in India. By involving the local community without any government funds. He first turned to his family and well-wishers for donations and began the Tamenglong Haflong Road purely on personal donations. More than 150 volunteers armed with shovels, bulldozers, and diggers donated by supporters started carving a road out of the hillside. As things stand, the road is nearly complete and can be described as the best Christmas gift ever in 2012. The people of the area would get. The road links Manipur with Nagaland and Assam. All I will say at this point of time, gfiles, we, ladies and gentlemen, and surely the principal of St. Stephen's College is very proud of you, who has all mentored us to be what we are today. Please welcome Mr. Armstrong Pame for this excellent contribution award. A big round of applause. He's so young, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister has to leave very urgently. Thank you so much. We just need a few more minutes. Mr. Pame, you're requested to be very brief. Thank you.
Very good evening. This evening, I'm very humbled to be standing in this august gathering because of whom the country functions. As one of the youngest member of the Indian Administrative Service, I feel really privileged to be standing here, sir. So this People's Road started. People may say, I did it, but I give the entire credit to the volunteers who chose to do the work by themselves. On the 3rd of December, a 65-year-old man, Mr. Hangam Buing, if I can have the projector. Hi, please turn back. Yeah, by the name of Mr. Hangam Buing, he passed away. He has been one of the gentlemen who wakes up every morning, call every volunteers to come and work. 2 days before he died, it was discovered that he was suffering from appendix case. He could not be taken to the hospital. His stomach burst on the 3rd of September and he passed away. This is the entire condition that my area still lives in today. Next. I am really blessed to be a part of this Indian Administrative Service. I'm just less than 4 years in the service, but when I go to the village and stand in front of them, whatever I say, they believe. They are willing to live and die for me. That's what I believe the service is all about. Next. It all started with this. I went and asked the people, what shall we do first? They said, sir, give us the road. I said, where do I get money from? I said, we'll go and ask the government. They said, yes, we have been waiting for the government. Yes, I represent a part of the government, but let's try once again. And before the government could come in, let us chip in whatever we have. And that is how we started the project. Next. The first contribution was this. Mr. Namdailung, he is 90-year-old. He said, sir, he said, acha, means my grandson, if you are going to give your 5-6 months salary for this, I also will be giving my 5-month salary, which is $1,000, because he gets an all-age pension of 200 rupees per month. And that is how we started the project. Next. How it gained momentum. Once we started, there was no looking back. My brother Jeremiah, who teaches in Delhi University, he formed a team. Then they started raising money through Facebook. And today, I'm glad to say that with 80% of the work done, over 25 lakhs rupees has been contributed from every part of the world. And the road progress has been amazing. Next. Next. This is how the work goes on with over 150, 200 people working every day. I do not pay them a single penny. When I ask them, should I pay you? They say, sir, we are building our own road. You don't have to even think about it. That is how the work carries on. Next. Next. The two villages which were never connected since the beginning of the mankind's history, village of Katangnam and Katyang. Today, I can proudly say that they have a motorable road. The next clip will show you this. Next. Next. They are seeing the vehicles in their soil for the first time. This is in Katangnam and Katyang village. The next. From here, what do we do from here? This is in no way gonna be usable during the monsoon season. All that we are doing is we are requesting the government to set a priority so that the government would come and make a bigger, better road. I'm just cutting across a row cutting so that at least my 4-wheel vehicle, a bike, could go through, so that in the time of emergency, people will be able to go through. This is when I cannot use my official vehicle, I hire this type of vehicle, and even this type of vehicle, we need volunteers to pull across. This is a 4-wheel vehicle. Next. People are still taken to the nearest hospital on bamboo stretchers. And I'm fully confident that now, as we progress along, the government is going to surely come and make a bigger, better road for the people of my area. The next clip. Thank you so much, the gfiles, for giving me this opportunity to make a presentation in front of all of you. Thank you so much. God bless.
We're indeed very proud of you. And I think, Mr. Tyagi, we should have invited Mr. Thampu, the principal of St. Stephen's College, to be here. He would have been so proud of one of our fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Just a small announcement. Personal contributions, Mr. Pame has come in. NTPC Chairman, Mr. Arup Roy Chaudhary, personally is contributing 11,000 rupees and is going to take up this case with NTPC as an official contributor for the development of the road. That's one. gfiles is beginning with a small contribution of 5,100 rupees and will take up the case further for generating further funds. We would like to support such great work, and thank you, Mr. Prabhat Kumar and your team, for giving us such great people and bringing them to the forefront. And trust me, from gfiles, this is just the beginning. Honorable Minister, just give us 5 more minutes and we shall obviously let you be on your very, very responsible routine. Our final award, ladies and gentlemen, the final award is the Lifetime Achievement Award, ladies and gentlemen. This goes to Mr. S.K. Mishra, retired, for setting exacting standards of leadership and leaving a lasting imprint on the administrative positions held in Haryana and central governments. Please lend us your ears, as this is the final award function for tonight. Mr. S.K. Mishra, ladies and gentlemen, Shashi Kant Mishra, is amongst the few administrators who is remembered and illustrated as a case study to the present generation of civil servants for excellence in governance, not for the specific work or position he held, but for the entire life he spent as a civil servant. A Haryana cadre IAS officer of the 1956 batch, he is a recipient of Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian award in independent India for distinguished services. He was also bestowed with the Living Legend Award at the Travel and Tourism Mart Satay on the South Asian Travel and Tourism Exchange that boasts of leading experts from India, Asia, and overseas. Mr. Mishra retired from the Government of India as Principal Secretary to the then Prime Minister, Mr. Chandrasekhar's office. Apart from this, he served as Secretary Ministries of Tourism, Civil Aviation, and Agriculture. He also remained the Director General, Festivals of India, that ranged from 12 to 18 months in France, the USA, Soviet Union, and Japan, and showcased India's rich cultural heritage and traditions in visual and performing arts globally. Mr. Mishra also had the rare distinction of serving as the Principal Secretary to two temperamentally different Chief Ministers of Punjab. Well, I'm not saying it, it's written in the script. Mr. Devilal, Chief Ministers of Punjab and Haryana, namely Devilal and Bansilal, and used his skills to change the destiny of Haryana, largely known as the person who developed tourism infrastructure and concepts like highway tourism, ecotourism, rural tourism in the state. We all see it today in Haryana if you travel throughout the state. He is the man known to have built several institutions in his long and distinguished career. Some of these include the Punjab Agricultural University, Motilal Nehru Sports Complex, and more than 20 Haryana tourism complexes, including Bhatkal, Damdama, etc. Surajkund and Chakravarti Lake Resort, Surajkund Handicrafts Mela, National Institute of Fashion Technology, and National Handloom Corporation have all been instituted under his captainship. As the iconic chairman and co-founder of the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, INTAC, along with legendary Madam Pupul Jaikar, Mr. Mishra has contributed to build INTAC as one of the big three amongst conservation of organizations of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, may we request you to give a standing ovation as gfiles present the Lifetime Achievement Award for fine governance over the sands of time to Mr. S.K. Mishra. This is the culmination of the Governance Awards, ladies and gentlemen. Please do put your hearts and soul into your claps, ladies and gentlemen. For a man who has served India and has proven to the world that perseverance and passion is all it takes.
gfiles, my good friend Salman, and distinguished members of the audience. I must compliment gfiles for having taken this initiative in instituting these awards and for the role they have played in projecting the issues and problems relating to good governance. Well, I have received a few awards earlier, but peer recognition means something special for me. And I'm very grateful to the jury for having considered me for this award. I joined the Punjab state in 1957, having passed out in 1956. And I served as Assistant Commissioner in Ludhiana. My Deputy Commissioner was an outstanding bureaucrat belonging to the first batch of the IAS, Mr. B.B. Bohra. I still remember the first words of advice that he gave me. With due deference to Salman, he said, politicians may come and go, but we continue till we retire. So don't compromise on principles, don't succumb to unnecessary wrong pressures. Stand upright, you may suffer, but ultimately you will come through. And it is these words of advice that stood me through my years in service, where I just refused to compromise in my entire service. I had my, well, in those days, the biggest punishment was a transfer. Now things are different. But I must say that the quality of politicians was totally different. And there was, in those days, we tend to sort of belittle the role of politicians or try to say there's a big gulf. But my experience has been that where the minister, the politician, is satisfied, is convinced of your integrity, of your dedication, passion, commitment, and ability to deliver, you have no problems. I have served under a large number of ministers in the state, in the center, and I must say I never had any problems, and I was able to do whatever I wanted to do without any bottlenecks or roadblocks. And if you have this sense of commitment, politicians respect you. I would give one example of my Deputy Commissioner then, Mr. B.B. Vora. He and Pratap Singh Caro were totally at loggerheads, and he would always oppose what Pratap Singh Caro asked him to do, which he felt was not correct. And he suffered also. Well, he was shifted from Ludhiana and he became Secretary PWD. And his then minister gave him a very damaging report in his ACR. It went to Pratap Singh Caro, and Pratap Singh, and this is what Mr. Vora told me, Pratap Singh wrote on the file that the minister has written these remarks obviously to please me. I have had huge differences with this officer. His integrity is unquestioned. His commitment is unquestioned. He's an asset to the state and an outstanding officer. Now that shows the respect that the political bosses have for persons whom they feel are totally committed. This is a great example. Another thing that advice I followed very seriously was when I took over as Principal Secretary to Bansilal. Was a very difficult person, very mercurial person, but I managed to survive for 7 years. My Chief Secretary, Mr. Sarup Krishna ICS, said, just remember one law of physics. What goes up, goes down. So keep your balance. Don't be taken, the post that you're holding, it shouldn't go to your head. And that is one thing that all civil servants have to rely, that they must treat all people as equal, give them time. I've come across, unfortunately, some colleagues who have given time to senior people, given time to public servants, given time to public people, not keeping the appointments, not informing them that they can't give the appointments, giving them waiting. This is disgraceful. And this gives a bad name to service. It's these things that give a bad name to service. I'm very glad to find younger officers being recognized, and I'm sure there must be hundreds of other officers serving in different areas who have done equally commendable work, and I'm sure their time will also come. But I'm also quite certain there are hundreds of officers who are totally disoriented. They need guidance. Unfortunately, in these days, my experience has been that the major responsibility lies on the senior officers. They do not guide them. They do not stand by them if they are in difficulty. And in our days, as Deputy Commissioner, my Deputy Commissioner used to take me on tours. I used to take my younger officers on tours. And if there was a case where we felt that an officer serving under us was being unnecessarily harassed, we stand by them. I remember one case I just like to mention just before concluding. When I was Deputy Secretary of Agriculture in the Punjab government, the minister wanted me to support one particular official for being promoted as Director of Agriculture, and I refused to do so. Unfortunately, what I wrote on the file was the only qualification that this man is his proximity to the minister. And I got a very damaging report. And so I made a representation to the Chief Secretary. Chief Secretary was Mr. Mangatra ICS, a very distinguished civilian. And he called me and said, I redrafted your report, your representation, which was addressed to him. And he said, go and show it to Mr. Fletcher, who was the senior most ICS officer in the state, and ask him to have a look at it. I went to Mr. Fletcher and he added, I worked under Mr. Fletcher, etc., etc. I said, sir, I've never worked under you. He said, shut up, we just take this. And it went to the Chief Minister. It was turned down, rejected. The Chief Secretary called me and said, you make a memorial to the President, which I did. In the meantime, the government fell. The memorial was sent back to an establishment board which examined all cases of victimization, and Mr. Fletcher was the chairman. So I sought an interview with him to explain my case. When I went to see him, he said, don't be facetious, you just get out. And all the remarks were expunged. So that is where, senior officers stood by you. Here was the Chief Secretary drafting your representation to himself, putting all the facts together. But these things are not so common now. I think this is where there's need. And if we have support of senior officers, constant guidance, I'm sure our image also would improve. But by and large, I'm very glad that our service has stood the test of time. We have brilliant officers who are still carrying the flag, holding the flag aloft, and I'm sure that, I'm glad that gfiles has given an opportunity for officers to express themselves, although I must say I don't agree with Prabhat Kumar and his suggestion, which is a laudable one, of officers going public. I think that can lead to, that has very dangerous possibilities. But in any case, a via media, some has to be found out of the present situation. Thank you very much.
A very frank and free Mr. S.K. Mishra, and that is what this platform is all about. Views need to be expressed very frankly and freely by everybody, including the top bosses. Ladies and gentlemen, one last time for Mr. S.K. Mishra, a big round of applause. And before we end this wonderful protocol, and before I invite finally, and thanking the Honorable Minister for his wonderful, patience, besides everything else, I would request our Honorable Minister to shower his blessings and best wishes to the Chairman NTPC, Mr. Arup Roy Chaudhary, who was not present during that protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arup Roy Chaudhary, a big round of applause. May I invite the Minister to kindly shower his best wishes with a shawl, and Mr. Prabhat Kumar with a bouquet. And thank you very much, NTPC, for your support to the program. A very humble recognition and thank you from gfiles, a media organization that believes in exposing excellence. And finally, on the dais, Honorable Minister, it's all yours for a few blessings, please. Thank you.
Good evening to all of you. I think it's the honor that's given to very distinguished serving officers is indeed a very wonderful thing. But I think to top it all, the icing on the cake is Mr. S.K. Mishra lifetime recognition. And indeed, I think more than an honor to him, it's an honor to someone like me to be associated with a function such as this. Outstanding jury led by Mr. Prabhat Kumar and all you distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I thought that being associated with this function would also give me an opportunity to meet with a lot of faces and names that have made a remarkable contribution to the edifice of our country that we know today. We have, I think, a remarkable structure of governance in our country. There are similarities elsewhere, but what we have is unique. I often travel to the world and I look around to see if they have officials or officers like the district magistrate or the superintendent of police, the district superintendent of police, and I find that it's unique here. Perhaps in some African countries you have similar offices. But what would we do if we didn't have these as the building blocks of governance as we know it? And I know that there are people who have very strong views about men and women who serve in headquarters, in the central government, and there are people who have very strong views about men and women who have served and do serve in the districts. Each one has very special features, special experiences, and something very special to contribute. And of course, it depends in what age you are serving in a particular capacity. Of course, I have in more recent weeks, I've had the advantage of interacting with some of your colleagues who are in the Indian Foreign Service. And that profile of the Indian Foreign Service has changed enormously. We have now people who are entering the service at least 7 years or 8 years time gap between them. There are people coming from very, very important professional backgrounds, accountancy, engineering, medicine, also people who've been lawyers, management graduates, people who've been journalists now joining the civil service. So I think something's of an enormous change is continuously happening. And certainly I think you can no longer think of civil servants being civil servants. Mishraji said with an apology that I talk about how civil servants interacted and interfaced with politicians, but I must remind Mishraji that a lot of civil servants are now making better politicians than us. They fight elections, they come to the upper house, they get into the government, and I watch them very, very closely. People coming from the armed forces and civil service into politics, I watch them very closely to see if they are any different. And I'm sorry, I must say, they look more like us than we ourselves, because I think that they evolve when they move from civil service. I wish that when they would come into civil service, there are exceptions. They come in from civil service into politics. I wish that they would bring in the quality, the caliber, the fabric that you have so admirably protected, preserved, and so admirably advanced in the civil service. Be that as it may, I stand here today, and I came particularly when Tyagiji, you rang and said, would you come to gfiles? I don't find reading gfiles very easy, because it's a little bit of a family journal. You have to have known a lot of people. You should have known how they've moved from different parts of government. And then you enjoy it a lot more. You see the larger picture. Otherwise, they are just sort of annotations, and they're just little bits of blurbs and informations, which obviously are important to those who are serving. But when you offered and asked me to come, I thought that it would be indeed great honor to be able to say in the presence of the best minds of our country. It would be a great opportunity for me, to pay tribute to the men and women who rule India. I take this from that famous book, The Men Who Rule India, because I do know, read the serious books about the men who rule India, or go to Yes Minister television series. The truth, in fact, is that we would be probably ungovernable if we didn't have the remarkable men and women who form the civil service of our country at different levels. And I did wish that I should be be able to pay tribute to you for what you have done by way of service and what you continue to do, and the gratitude and indeed the sense of obligation we feel towards the remarkable work that you've all done. But obviously this is no time to look at the changing face of civil service, how the accountability principles are going to act and evolve. But I do see some promising dimensions, and I see some worrying dimensions. As you sit here and award each other, there are men who've been your peers and who've perhaps have had your admiration and who perhaps have had your company and companionship. There are men and women who are being questioned under very trying circumstances by courts of law, by investigative agencies. They are, after many years of retirement, being dragged back to court to answer questions that are very ambiguous, questions that could be extremely, extremely discomforting. And why is this happening? And I think that we need to find a solution to this. We have different organs of government now disagreeing. Ministers were supposed to protect their civil servants. The civil servants were not supposed to be attacked in Parliament or questioned in Parliament, although the ministers were obviously fully backed by their civil servants in everything they said in Parliament. And there was a strong convention, indeed a law, that civil servants were not made accountable personally. But today, civil servants are being made accountable personally, and we have seen some extremely discomforting scenarios in recent years. And I'm not blaming one organ of government or another, but I'm only simply saying that something has to be done. We need a dialogue between different organs of government. I don't know how that's possible. We need a fresh look through an appropriate commission. I know there are a huge number of volumes of the Administrative Reforms Commission that are pending implementation. And I do think that somewhere there, perhaps there are some answers to this very issue of accountability. There is growing accountability and demand for growing accountability in our country, which is a good thing. As democracy matures, accountability provisions should also become more stringent, more easily accessible to people, and therefore the mention of right to information is very significant. But you know that we have on the anvil a far-reaching legislation that will make not just politicians but civil servants also accountable in a manner in which we couldn't have imagined it a few years ago, and that's the Lokpal bill, which is about to come. I had participated in that process, and I can assure you that what should have been an edifying and an exciting process became for us an extremely tiring and a tiresome process, because fundamental principles that are principles, as I believe, that ensure rule of law were being violated in the name of populism, and demand that they be sidestepped, and then threats that anybody who stood up for principles that are fundamental to democracy and fundamental to rule of law, anybody who stood up for those principles was actually standing up for corruption. Now, I do believe that the civil service and the political sector of our country have to get very clearly, and I think this the courts will have to recognize as well, they'll have to understand that there is a concept, and there must be a concept, and without that we will destroy our society, and that concept is the concept of an honest mistake. Now, I don't think the judges should have a problem understanding this, because every day you hear appeals from the High Court to the Supreme Court. And every day when a Supreme Court decides a matter, take the most recent judgment that they pronounced on the election of our Honorable President, it was a judgment of 3-2. Now, a judgment of 3-2 of the highest court of the land doesn't mean that one lot of 2 judges were completely wrong and one lot 3 judges were completely right. But our system is Our system is that the majority of judges will prevail, irrespective of how good the minority is and how convincing, compelling, and persuasive the arguments of the minority judges is. And sometimes we know over the years, minority views given by a particular bench some years later become the dominant majority view. And that's how we see the law evolve and the law change. But till such time as that happens, the view that's been taken by the minority remains a minority view, and therefore different from the majority view. Now somebody there is making an honest mistake. In other words, somebody interpreting the law of the land as we do based on precedents and on first principles is coming to a conclusion that is different from conclusion drawn by somebody else. Now, it can't be that both are correct. It has to be that one is wrong, and I'm happy to put that wrong in inverted commas. And one that is wrong is not dishonest. A judge who decides against a point of view is an honest judge, in spite of the fact that more judges would have decided against that point of view. Now, that is a fundamental thing that I believe, we understood in this country. Suddenly we have a generation that doesn't understand this, or does not want to understand it, and are actually being propelled by the media of our country to question the fundamentals, the right to defend yourself, the presumption of innocence, that you are innocent till proven guilty, that there is a concept of an honest mistake, that there is a process of evidence by which even something that you may have seen by your own eyes is not accepted in court unless it is placed in a particular manner, and you are cross-examined on what you have seen. If you're not cross-examined on what you have seen, simply because you can stand up